Hello everybody, my name is Matt Pierce. I'm the Learning and Video Ambassador for TechSmith. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. We've got a great topic we're going to be talking about. The thing that maybe you don't love is feedback. Before we get into that topic though, I want to talk about a couple things, just reminders, some announcements of course that we do here just to help you guys out. One thing I always like to mention is the TechSmith Academy, which is a free online learning platform where you can go and learn about all sorts of topics like writing scripts, storyboards. In fact, I can tell you, we actually have a video. There's this one, I think it's the last course on, and inside of that course is a lesson on feedback. So we're going to be talking about that, pulling from that a little bit today, but you can always go check that out. We've got interviews with some creators like Brian Fanzo, Amy Landino, Roberto Blake, and others that we've done that are really excellent at video creation. We've also talked to some really awesome people in the L&D industry. So learning and development, people who are talking, they're talking about creating training content. So go check out that. That's all free content. Just go out to TechSmith Academy. You can log in and you can see all of that content. In addition to that, I want to talk about something else that's I think is really valuable for everybody. Most of us have been impacted by what's going on in these kind of the weird kind of crazy environment of today. Oh man, it looks like I don't have it right now. Anyway, you can go out, check TechSmith, go to our website, techsmith.com. If you go out there, one of the things you can find is if you just search for COVID, we've got a free offer right now. Anyone's affected by things that are going on, your business is trying to figure out how to work from home, you're an educator in particular, and you're trying to now figure out how to get information to your students. We have a free offer for Snagit and Video Review you download it and you'll get it free through the end of June. So that's something you can go out and you can get. Just go again, TechSmith COVID. You'll search those things together and you'll be able to get access to Snagit now to the end of June for free. And Video Review, which we'll talk about today actually, because it really can help with feedback. But in addition, it's a great way to have a conversation around an image or video that's asynchronous. I know people are doing a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of Google Hangouts and things like that, but sometimes you don't want to have to schedule a half an hour meeting or 30-minute, an hour meeting or whatever to do that. So we'll be talking more about that. So just again, a few announcements just to get going here. Of course, I am monitoring the chat today, so if you have questions, you have thoughts, you have things you want to talk to us about, let me know, because honestly, it makes my job a lot easier if I know who I'm talking to and if I can answer your questions. I think we both feel more satisfied with the end result. But today is, we're going to talk about feedback, and I'm going to be really honest. Feedback is tough for me to receive. I'm not a great, I love feedback. It's good for me. I recognize that as a professional. I need to grow. I need to develop. But sometimes it's difficult. And particularly today, though, the type of feedback I want to talk about is not necessarily like I'm a manager and I'm going to give you feedback on how you can perform your job better, although that might be involved in this. I want to talk about project feedback, things that, as we're now remote, that you might have just gone over to someone's desk and said something like, hey, can I show you something real quick? Can you give me some thoughts on what you think about this? Or, hey, let's watch this together and talk through what things you think we should do here. So I think the feedback we're going to be talking about today is going to be a lot more focused on that project feedback, how to do it if you're remote, if you're not together, because, projects got to go forward. If you're doing a job, you got to still move things forward, whether you're creating training content, marketing content, ads, or, maybe you're even doing stuff from, like a developer perspective. So just so you know, it looks like our audio video stuff, I'm getting some streaming stuff, so we might not be getting we might get some buffering today, but that's unfortunately the way the internet goes when you're working from home all the time now. Probably used up all my bandwidth earlier today, the kids playing Fortnite. So okay, so let's jump into this. Obviously, a stakeholder, the key decision maker, might be the decision. Pass, fail. Does this move forward? Does this not move forward? Are there changes that must be made? But the other people, you might want to give them things that they can do. Maybe there's a section of your video that you're looking at that you're going to say like, hey, this is a piece of the video that I want you to look at because I'm struggling with this. Or what did you think about this part of the message? Or if it's a training, was this clear enough for you to be able to take action? By giving your reviewers a specific purpose, goal, thing that you're looking for, you're going to be able to narrow them into what is the key portion of the feedback. And that way you're going to get more focused feedback, because I know a lot of times I'm sent documents or videos for review and they're like, hey, just review this. And the question is, what am I reviewing it for? Like, do I know enough information? Do I care enough? And so by having a specific purpose, like, hey, Matt, could you look to make sure we didn't miss anything in terms of information? That's a really clear thing that'll be really helpful. So definitely think about, one, limiting the people, and then two, start giving each person a purpose and a job in that feedback. And, again, you might have some general folks just looking at it, but maybe you want to give somebody like, hey, I know you're really good at making sure that, there's no typos, copy editing type errors. Could you look at that? Play to people's strengths, then let them feedback on that versus kind of generally everything. And again, unless that's their purpose. So now let's go on to the next thing here. Number 3. I'm flying through these because I'm gonna be honest. I think we can look at some practical examples here once we get through the best practices. But number 3, don't be afraid to send a first terrible draft. And I know this is one of the tougher things. Like, if you think limiting the number of people giving you feedback is hard, because everyone wants to say in something, being able to send something that's not finished is really hard. Because one, you don't want people to think that, oh, well, they did such a terrible job, it doesn't even look like it's polished. But the idea here is not to confuse people, but it's to get them to see stuff early on when you haven't spent as much time making changes to whatever it is you're creating. So for instance, I'm thinking about video a lot, but like if I send them a really rough cut things, it's not colors, there's no colors to it, there's no maybe graphics, maybe I just got some transitions, or maybe it's just cuts even. I just want them to focus on the message. It's so much easier to pull back and change from that than it is if you are sending them that's really polished, because if you spend a lot of time on it, you're not going to want to change it. So we're getting in at a different point of giving our feedback from an investment point of view. And so I see some folks saying hi. So again, think about what you could send. So if it's a document, right, send an early draft and maybe even mark points you're not sure about in that process so that you can, say to them like, hey, I don't know if this is the thing that I want them to I don't know if this is what we really want to say. So you might want to think about how you could, give them some indications like you're not sure about something. But again, you could give them a specific job on an early draft. I think for video in particular, this makes it even earlier. It might be a script. Hey, just read the script. Are we hitting the right directions? Maybe give them a storyboard. As they look at the storyboard, that's a cheap way to build a video, right? Make a quick storyboard. If you want to voice over and have just kind of still images, you could do that as well, just to give them something to see. So that way you can decide and they can decide what is the right thing that you're trying to get them to approve. Because I know, so for example, TechSmith Academy, I mentioned at the beginning of this live event, you can go out there, and the very first episode we made was a basics of script writing. And we've been talking a lot about what we were going to create. We've talked a lot about the style that we were going to create. And there was some, let's say, lack of clarity on what that would look like. I thought I had a pretty clear vision. I tried to spell it out, tried to give some examples of some other work that might be a comparable kind of comparison. And it kind of felt like, maybe not. And so what we did is we took an iPhone, just an iPhone out, and we had a script, and we just made the video like super rough. No lighting, no microphones. And then we kind of cut something together. And then we showed it. We went to the group of people that were going to be in charge of approving it, and we said, here's what we're thinking about. This is what we think it might be like. Not that it would be like this, but that it might be like this. And so as we did that, they could see the sense of style, the timing, and there was definitely things we needed to fix and change and rethink about, but it gave confidence. And we got the feedback that we needed so we could move forward and then make something that we think turned out a lot better. So, think about this again. So the first 3 tips here when you're going about the feedback process, especially with digital media, whether it's a website, whether it's a video, whether it's an image, whatever it might be that you're making or getting feedback on, see if you can limit the number of reviewers. 2 to 5 is a good number. My colleague Danny Wittenborn, who I gave me permission to use a lot of his content here, he said that they had a video with 33 reviewers, and you can imagine the stress that might cause on someone who's got to fix it, because that is way too much. Way too many people getting into the soup, mixing it up and causing all sorts of problems. Everybody's throwing in stuff, and while there's probably good ideas in there, you don't want to get it convoluted, because you want to focus on the best ideas and the right feedback. Again, number 2, give each person that's going to give you feedback a purpose. Give them a direction of what you want from them, so they're not just going in and saying like, yeah, I guess this is okay, or like they're focusing on maybe even the wrong things. And it's okay to tell them like, hey, this part, we know this needs work. We're going to work on this. You can ignore it for now, if that's the case. And then 3, don't be afraid to send that first terrible draft. Terrible drafts are wonderful. They're hard to send, but if you can convey that intent, I think it works out really well for everybody. So these are the first couple ones. I think these are valuable. We got some more to go through here, so let's go on to the next set of feedback practices. Again, we'll go into some other ideas and actually giving feedback, but we got a couple more I want to get through. So the 4th one, find people that you can trust and that will be honest. Now, of course, what I hope is that you work someplace where you feel like you can trust people. But just from a story perspective, I want to share a story. So back in the early days of my time at TechSmith, around 2007, had been hired as promoted to the manager of the training team, hired a couple of people onto that team, and I think we had a really good rapport. And it's one of my favorite times of working with TechSmith, just because this group, we had this, we clicked, and we just were working really well. And we weren't afraid to give hard feedback. And I remember one particular video, and in this group, there was myself, 1, 2, 3, I think 3 or 4 full-time employees, and an intern. And the intern was reviewing my video because he was making videos, and he was giving me such precise feedback, like, your mouse cursor is off by a half second here. And it was frustrating, right? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's this detailed of feedback. But I loved it because I trusted him. I knew the quality of work that he was doing. I knew what he was capable of. And I knew where he was coming from, frankly. I knew that his intention was to make the best looking thing that we could make. And it wasn't about me and the job that I had done, even though I was the manager. And so I love that we had this trust and this rapport. And I've had that many times throughout my career where I knew I could trust the feedback that I was getting. And oftentimes, that can be challenging. So what do you do here? How do you get to that point? Well, first of all, you have to lay out your cards on the table, I think, and be honest with them. This is what I'm looking for. We in that group in particular at that time had a rule too, that we said, if you give me feedback and I disagree, I can ignore that feedback if I have a good reason. If there's something valid that I can say, like, why I'm not going to change it. And it could be, and there was cases we did this, that sometimes it's like, I really appreciate that particular piece of feedback and it would make it better, but the investment cost to make that change would be too great. And so then we'd leave it and we'd say, we're willing to make that sacrifice, even though it's going to maybe reduce the quality a little bit, so that we can be done, or that we can move on to the next thing, or meet our deadlines, which was maybe more important than that particular piece of feedback. So I think starting to develop those ground rules with each other is really, really valuable. And that can be tough, right? Like if you're working with someone senior above you, you have to have that manage up type mentality where you're going to talk to them about like, hey, what are your expectations? When you give me feedback, is it you are the law? Is it, can I push back? And hopefully you'll know that in your culture. And I get not all cultures are open. Sometimes they're really top down, heavy driven. But if you can develop that trust and know where their feedback is coming from, that is really a powerful thing. So, that's going to take time. It's going to take effort on your part to build those conversations. Another way that I found that can happen is by when you are asked for the feedback and the review, definitely go out and do that, right? Go out and be the person that gives them honest, direct, good feedback. So let me just check the comments here. See gamer, see someone else saying some emojis. So, okay, well, if you guys do have questions, make sure you put them in the comments so that we can answer questions about feedback. So I don't know what you mean by it's fake, but it is what it is. So, okay, so let's go on. So we've talked about get people that you can trust. The next one, and this one's really important because I've often found myself in this pickle. Number 5 is provide deadlines. What? Seems like a no-brainer. Of course you have a deadline. You want things to come in at a certain time. But here's the thing. Oftentimes people are busy. I know what my inbox looks like. I've got a management tool that, my tasks are going into from different people, different stakeholders in the organization. And I have so many things to try to keep track of. It's really tough. And if I don't have a deadline, I don't prioritize. So when you're seeking feedback, you need to give your feedback giver a deadline. And now, of course, you have to be mindful, like their schedules and, what's feasible. But without that feedback, it's likely that there's going to be so many other things that rise to the top, you're not going to get the feedback that you need. So I highly recommend that what you do is give it a date. Put a date on it that you can ask someone and say like, hey, I would like you to review this by next Tuesday. Now, as you give the date, you do need to give enough kind of like headway so that they have enough time to get through the feedback. Because if you don't, the thing that's going to happen is they're not going to have time because you're asking them to all of a sudden prioritize it. I mean, in a perfect state, they would know it's coming. You give them a week or 2 weeks or whatever the right amount of time is, and then they just know they plan for it and they can do it. But the thing is that sometimes things come up and you're like, okay, it's ready to be reviewed now and go, but do give them enough time, but don't give them too much time. It's a world of contradictions, I know. If you give them too much time, it's going to sit at the bottom inbox and likely forgotten. The other thing that this allows, and the challenge here is one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you're thinking about if someone's going to miss the deadline, what does that mean? If they are someone who is, a senior executive, or they're someone that's going to have station that, they get the final say no matter what. Okay, that's fine. That's the way it's going to be. But for other people, if they miss the deadline, then you at least have some place to say, hey, you missed your deadline. And then you have to decide, is it okay? Or have you moved on with the work? Because again, with a lot of the digital assets we're taking, if maybe you're working on a series of screenshots and you ask for feedback and now you've annotated them and added other things to them, and all of a sudden they're a week late and they're like, oh yeah, we need to change that. It's like, wait a second, I've already done other work. Do you really want me to go back and change the work that I've done? And it might be important enough that you do that. But in some cases, it might be that date gives you an accountability line and say like, hey, I gave you a date. We didn't talk about changing the date, which you should be open to if someone comes to you and says, I can't make the date. But then you can say like, hey, we had this date. This was what was agreed to by the stakeholder. Thanks for your feedback. And then maybe you change something, maybe you don't. So just check in the comments. Again, thank you. Love using Camtasia. Awesome. Camtasia is great. You can use Camtasia. You can use Snagit to give feedback, or obviously you want to get feedback on your projects. And Excel says, I've translated your Spanish roughly. Good content. Personally use Camtasia Studio 2019 as the best program to spread what I know with the whole world. Thank you very much, TechSmith, for your support. You are very much welcome. It's awesome. So it's Excel made easy. That's awesome. We really appreciate you guys using our stuff. So, okay, so we've set some dates, right? We've got some dates. We've got some deadlines. We've got people that we trust. We're going through this. Let's look at number 6 here, which is use version control. Now, version control is something that's interesting, right? Because not a lot of things you're going to have that. But like, think about a document, right? If I'm writing maybe a blog post, or I'm writing something for a web page, if I'm writing it like in Google Docs, you're going to get that version control. You're going to be able to see the changes. So that way, if someone comes back to you and says, oh, no, you can show them like, oh, here's the chain that we've made. Now that gets a little bit harder with digital media. Like if you're making something in Snagit, you can't really just undo and see the things because that would get messy. So you might have to save multiple iterations, version 1, version 2, version 3. But with video, there are ways to do this now. And, there are multiple tools, but one that I'll talk about is Video Review from TechSmith. It's a service that you can upload your video, and it's going to give you a timeline that you can put markers, and you're going to see comments, and you're just going to keep track of those things. And you can also then, like, you make changes, you can put another version up, and you can do some comparison. So, but the reason for the version control, why I think this is so valuable to anyone making any kind of content, is because then you can see the progression, right? Like what got changed. And then if there's a dispute, like, no, we didn't want that, you have it in your back pocket. Say, no, actually, here's what we went from. We went from A to B to C version, and this is how it went. And that might be, I very rarely have seen version control become an issue for me, but I know in some places that's super important. And it might be that you need to document for legal reasons that you made a change. Like, oh, we had to update this thing here because from a brand perspective or copyright perspective or whatever, and you can show that you did it. So be thinking about the ways to show that you've made changes or track those changes. Even if, maybe it's keeping a log. Okay, you respond to a comment and you say like, okay, yep, I made this change. I switched it to this clip or this part of the video or whatever it might be. And you know your organizations, the people you're working with better than I do. So what will be necessary. But I think it's important to keep track of those things, because there's been times I wanted to go back. I want to be like, oh, you know what? Actually, we had it in the first place. Especially important if someone comes in late to the process and you've already made a bunch of changes. It's nice to see like, okay, well, what did we change? How does this compare? And does it work? So yeah, those are a couple more. One more slide here we're going to look at, and then we'll talk about some practical examples here, because I think that's important. So 7 and 8. So these are my last kind of canned tips for you guys. Number 7, this goes such a long way. Number 7 is thank your reviewers. Now, if you're doing a job, right? It's like, well, it's their job. I don't necessarily need to thank them. The reason you want to be thankful and grateful for the feedback you get, even if you don't always agree with it, is because you probably are going to need those people to review something for you again in the future. And if you've made it a good process for them, you've made it that you're easy to work with, that makes it easier for you to get better feedback. I think it increases the trust, because not only do you want to trust your reviewer wants to trust you, that you're listening to what they have to say. And again, not to say that you always have to take exactly and do what they say, but by being a trusted person as a creator and being thankful for that feedback, you're showing to them that you are going to be someone they want to work with, because you're going to make their life so much easier, and you're going to be thankful for what they give you. And they're going to feel like the work that they're doing is worthwhile, because sometimes you give feedback and if it goes into a black hole, you're like, well, why did I spend the time doing that? I don't know what happened. I don't care. I don't need to know necessarily, but it'd be sure nice to know that changes got implemented based on what was talked about or what I suggested, or did they do anything with that? Why did I spend my time on that? So it's a small thing. Just be grateful for the feedback. Thank your reviewers and let them know that you're someone that they want to work with, and you're going to be handling their feedback really with care. So that's an easy one. 8. Let's see. What did I say here? Find a tool made specifically for this process. I missed a letter. I apologize. It should say tool there. Find a tool. And I talked a little bit about that already, right? We talked about video review. A lot of tools now have some type of reviewing process inside of it so that you can do this. You could go to Dropbox, Vimeo if you're doing video. Obviously, the Google Drive, those tools, Microsoft Word, the Microsoft Suite has ways to give feedback. Kind of depends on what you're doing and what you want feedback on, but I definitely recommend that you find a tool that's made for that. But let's talk about some practical examples, and want to dive into those practical examples because I think outside of having a dedicated tool, there's some really easy things that we can do here. So I'm going to move some things around here, get ready for my screen. And as we do that, let me just remind you that we do have the offer for the the COVID-19 help, if you're trying to get your business, changing and working remotely, trying to figure out how to do things like give feedback, Snagit is available from now to the end of June for free. Just go search for TechSmith and COVID-19. You'll find the offer. We're also giving away during this period of time from now to the end of June is video review, which we talked about earlier. And I'm going to demo it here in a few minutes and show you some cool things that we can do and why a dedicated tool is probably even more important. So, okay, so one thing we're going to do, let me go, I got to find Snagit here. I'm going to bring up Snagit because I think I love being able to give visual feedback. I have many times I've sat down and I said, somebody's asked me for some feedback, or I found something I need to give feedback on, and I start to write an email. And then all of a sudden I'm like, this is going to take me 20 minutes or more. And I realize, dang it, I could show you, or whoever I'm talking to, I could show them so much faster what I mean. In fact, this is a real example. So let me go over here so you can see. This is a real example of, I screenshotted this. It was in a video that I'm working with someone. They're building these videos out, doing a great job. But the alignment here was kind of funky, right? It didn't feel like it worked. And maybe this was intentional, maybe not. But when I looked at it, I said, this doesn't feel right. So all I did in Snagit is I added 2 simple arrows. Now, I did write a little sentence like, hey, you might want to check the alignment at this spot. That's it. That's all I did. And within seconds, they understood the meaning of what I was talking about. I didn't have to say like, well, should we, maybe move, let's simplify over and align it. There's a whole bunch of things you could say to get someone to understand this. And while you could probably be more concise than I am, in this case, 2 arrows, a screenshot and 2 arrows is all I needed. And I think that's one of the power of giving visual feedback on things is that it's just easy. You can just see exactly what we're talking about. Now, there's lots of ways to do this and other scenarios too. So let me go to just another image here. Let me make this full screen so you hopefully can see it better. This is not a big deal. This is just a very simple example of a quiz question. Whoa, got way too big there, guys. And so what this is, so let's say there's nothing here, but maybe I wanted to give feedback. Maybe we're talking about the layout here. So maybe this is a web page. And maybe as the developers are working on this, I have some feedback about alignment or something else going on here. I could just use my Snagit tools. Again, excuse me. I could use arrows to point things out like, hey, I really like this addition here. And maybe I even put some text. So let's get rid of that arrow. We can do this. Let me just use a text call out. Let's do this one. And I could type here, right? Like that it's numbered. Cool. Easy peasy. But maybe I have an idea of how to change some things around here. Maybe I actually think that this add answer button should be up higher. Now, I don't know that that's the right thing, but one of the things I could do in Snagit to give feedback is I could actually I'm going to do an autofill here, and I'm just using the selection tool. I'm just going to move this out of the way. So it's out of my way. I'm going to take these and I'm going to move them down. And again, I'm going to move this up here. And again, I don't know if this is the best layout, but you can see what I've done. And then maybe I add another, a text call out or just some text or something. And we'll get this in place, move this here. And maybe my feedback is in the form of a question. What if this was on top? Now they can see what I've done. Now, you might want to do things to indicate that you've changed it more or whatever, but the visual feedback here, again, I can give them an example of what I'm talking about. So there's no clarity or missing clarity. They can just know. And, it could be that, I could have wrote this out and said like, hey, what if we put the add answer click box on top above the answers instead? And then there might be some questions like, well, does it go here? Do we need, oops, let me get that out of the way. Or what if does it go over here? Like all of a sudden I've given them exactly what I want. So as you're giving feedback, think through what can you show? Is there something to show? And, when it comes to things like text, you're going to use typical text. That's fine. But let me show you another example here. So this is a thumbnail for this particular live event. One of the things we did, I threw this picture into a background removal tool, and there is this ever so slightly place where it looks like it didn't quite remove my background. And so I just sent this, and it was interesting. It wasn't quite enough. It was not quite enough feedback to people, because I was mostly asking them for their opinion. Does this matter? Does it not matter? But imagine, let's say there was a problem with, they didn't like the text. It'd be easy for someone to come in here again, do the thing that they did before. They could just change it out, or maybe that's not obvious enough. That's what they want. So maybe let's go choose a color here. Let's just bump this to, because red is the kind of a good symbol to say, nope. Oh, nope. I don't want that. I want just do a line. Again, we'll make it red. And maybe I just want to say, like, we don't want this. That's very clear, right? That's all of a sudden, that tells me exactly what my reviewer is thinking, again, with very few actions needing to be taken to convey the message. So, again, if you have questions about this, let me know, and I'm happy to go into more detail. Snagit is a great tool for this, because I can clearly go in here, and anything visual, I can kind of mark it up. So let me go here. So this is one more. So this is just all text, right? Again, I can cross things out. I can delete. I can highlight things. I can move things around. Can kind of do all of that. But if, let's say someone's just got a typo, right? Like, and I don't think there's a typo on this. Maybe there is. But let's say recording was spelled wrong. Again, I can just come in here and I can call that out. And this works for any kind of site, anything you want to move around. This is obviously from a Google page, but again, you could maybe even do something that's more indicative rather than actually making changes. Like, okay, well, it's just a line. That doesn't help me out. So let's just change this to a green arrow, meaning, hey, this should go on top. So again, as you're going through and thinking about the things that you're doing, really be thinking about what can you do to make your feedback as clear as possible. And for static stuff, Snagit is pretty awesome. But it gets a little trickier when you're doing with video. And I want to go in and I want to show you guys video review at this time, just so you can see it. And again, get the concept, because it's changed a lot of the things that I do from a work perspective. So I also want to give some kind of like side uses that you could use it for, but for it was built really with feedback in mind. And so let me just open up. I opened up an old project. This is what you're going to see here. This is an older video that we worked on. It was more of an advertisement. I'm going to turn on my camera so you can get the full screen view. So basically, this was an advertisement. It's not going to play back well. But basically, I was promoting that I was going to speak at a different event. So it's just camera video, doing a walk and talk. I've got some different shots in here. And what you'll notice, and what hopefully you can see on the screen, is there are these little tab markers. So if I click on one, it jumps me to that very specific point. But what that does is we've got comments along the side. And this is actual feedback that was sent to me about whatever was happening in that moment. And so like on this one here, if we jump ahead, Andy, who I work with, he says, could you hold another beat or two after you turn your back to the computer? So, he's able to hone in exactly, because what we used to have to do in this situation, we would literally take something like this and you would write at the point of time. Like you would say, like at 0:20 seconds, could you do this? And then you'd have another line with another piece of feedback, and you would have to type out manually all those times, which, okay, that's not too bad. But the next person, the person receiving it, then had to go to that point and say, like, okay, scrub. Where is it at 20 seconds? Is this the right exact point? And if you have more than one reviewer, remember we recommend 2 to 5 reviewers. The thing is, then that person may not even have seen your feedback. And maybe you don't want them to. Maybe you want an independent, kind of viewpoint. But if you do want to see it so they don't have to repeat them, kind of give the same feedback, they can just skip ahead to the next thing. Now, all of a sudden, not only can we show you that where the feedback falls at the point of time, you can have a conversation. And so I could say like, yeah, oh, it got caps on. That's not cool. Yes, we can do that. And then I could submit that and he'd see it. And the other thing is you can see that these are all been resolved. So the video editor was in there and he was adding check marks saying, yep, did that, did that, did that. So he's keeping track. Now, there are a few other things that didn't get resolved. So I could just say, yep, we did that, right? And it gets checked off. And then I can see all the contents. I can see some details about it. And so this is why a dedicated tool gets me excited about things like video, because all of a sudden you can start to look at things very specifically. You can start to really hone in what you're going to talk about, what kind of feedback you're going to get. So I really love it. Now, obviously built for feedback, giving that review. You can switch versions. So if you got a new version, you can upload it. You'll have a version 2. You can actually give deadlines in here to your reviewers. You can send them a link. One of the things, let me just show you here. Let me go back to my screen real quick. This is kind of cool. Let's say there's something going on in the background here. Like, let me choose didn't want to play that. Let me go back to that point. So it's easy to get back to. Okay, I'm going to select the arrow tool at the bottom. I can be like, remove. That would require a reshoot, but the idea being we could point out some things. We could also, put a square, or we could do some, like maybe I want to make it more obvious. It's clear, whatever. It can even change the color. So just a few things that you can do at the point in time. I'm just going to get rid of those so we don't alert Andy to feedback on a couple-year-old video. But really cool. So let me talk to you guys about another use case. So if you're an educator in particular, and I know my kids are going through this right now. We're moving, schools have closed for the rest of the year, but they still have a importance of teaching, and they're connecting with their students. And, it seems like every class has started up some type of Zoom meeting, and those are fine. But when you got multiple children in, only not enough machines to get everybody, or devices to get everybody on, it becomes a challenge. With this, we've done this as a meeting instead, where, for instance, one of our senior leadership members created a video. It was probably mostly a recording of a PowerPoint presentation, so nothing really fancy. They put it in video review, and then they sent it to the people that needed to watch this content. And that was the place where we could ask questions or we could make comments. Now, there may have been a follow-up meeting where we made a decision or, did something more, but it becomes a great way to have these asynchronous conversations around a piece of content. In particular, it could be a lesson. It could be a meeting, as I said. It could be maybe, like I do this a lot. I actually give these debriefs on, like I was on an event. Here's what I learned, or here's who I met, or whatever it might be. And that way we don't have to get together via conference call or when we are allowed to be in person. So lots of different options there for you as you dig in. So one thing else I'm going to do here, one of the things I like to do is I like to ask people's advice in situations like this, where it's a topic that I think is important, and I want to make sure that we're giving you the most value in this. So one of the things that I did is I went to my LinkedIn network, and I want to thank everybody who was willing to give me some feedback, because there was some really good feedback in there about feedback, like some good advice. And I'm going to read these. I'll leave the names off of it just because I haven't talked to the folks about what it is, about sharing that. So I'm just going to share these kind of anonymously. If you're watching now and you're one of those folks, you want to tag yourself or tell me it's okay, that's fine, but we'll just keep it safe. So one of them said, don't be afraid of hearing the truth. So this is as a feedback receiver, and this is such important advice because it can be hard. It can be hard to be told your work wasn't quite right, or wasn't good enough, or something was wrong. That pride kicks in. We want to be right. We want to be good. But I think it's decent advice. So it says, don't be afraid of hearing the truth. It's all about how the students feel. So talking about education, feel in the terms of how you're delivering the lesson content. If 4 or more students don't understand the content, then maybe it needs to be simplified. This is why it's important you build relationships first before you get into the meat and potatoes of a curriculum. Great advice, right? Like, think about that relationship. Think about how it's going to come off. If you're giving feedback, or if they're, giving you feedback, that relationship, you want to build it up a little bit. I mean, sometimes anonymous feedback is great because it's easy. You don't have to care about it. But if you're going to be in a long-term working relationships with someone, it's really, really, really important. So this person says, love the idea of creating ground rules for when and why you may not apply feedback. This is a great suggestion, but not worth the investment, so we'll make a sacrifice to skip it. It's so helpful for maintaining trust and ensuring their willingness to provide future feedback to you. Yeah, again, going back to that, let people know, this happens in video stuff all the time. It's like, we haven't done the final graphics. We haven't done the final lower third. We haven't done the final this. Please ignore it. If we get feedback about how we just put a placeholder in there, we're going to ignore it. But we want the feedback giver to understand that. That's why we're ignoring it, because that was a placeholder. It wasn't meant to be. And so yeah, I definitely think that's a good advice. Lay some ground rules. Like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I expect. This is when I expect it. So appreciate that comment. This one is another comment. Right now, we need to be very conscious of social values. We need to see as often as possible. There's a link to a video by Marcus Buckingham about coaching versus feedback. And I do think as you get into interpersonal feedback, it's a whole different ballgame than giving project feedback. And I'm not an expert really in either. I've given a lot of feedback in my life. I've been a manager for a number of years. And what I'll say is that in either case, whether you're the feedback giver or the feedback receiver, empathy is really important here, because you need to be able to know where that person's feedback is coming from. Like, why are they so passionate about that color change or color correction in that visual? Or why is that word choice not working? And it's helpful to understand how your feedback might impact someone. Are they sensitive to feedback? And that doesn't mean don't give it by any means. You got to give feedback. But what it means is thinking through what's going to make it the most effective, what's going to give them the most value in what you're saying, so that you're going to get through. Because frankly, you don't want people shutting down when you're giving them feedback. So appreciate the folks who commented on my LinkedIn post. It's so helpful to hear those things. So how are we doing? We're doing in time. I don't see any other real comments other than another hello. So let's do this, because we don't have to go for a full hour, but what I want to do real quick is I'm just going to review the points really fast that we went through at the very beginning, just so that you all, if you came in late, you get these. But these are the 8 best practices we have around giving feedback. So I'm not going to go into detail here. I'm just going to relay them out, and then unless there's questions or other thoughts, we're gonna call it a day. So first one, limit the number of viewers to 2 to 5 people if possible. No, it's not always possible, but if you can, it's super helpful. 2, give each recipient a purpose and a specific instructions. Give them the things that you want them to do and focus on. 3, don't be afraid to send that first terrible draft. Get them in early so that you can shape it easier. It's so much easier to change words than it is to change video. It's so much easier to change a concept and a storyboard than it is to change, like a full done PDF graphic. So those are good first things to do. So next up, we'll do 4, 5, and 6. If I can get it to transition here. 4, find people that you can trust that will be honest. Now, sometimes you don't get to choose your reviewers, but hopefully you can build a rapport with them, as I was saying, to get good, honest feedback, and let them know that that's what you want. You really want to know, because you want to make this the best possible. 5, provide deadlines, and I'd add to that, provide guidelines to them about what you're looking for. I think that falls into some instruction stuff. 6, use version control if you can. It's super helpful, keeps everybody accountable, make sure you're tracking things, and you can always revert back if you need to, because if someone comes in and says, like, no, I liked it the first way, and you change something, well, it's easier to go back that way. And then as we go to 7, be thankful for your reviewers. And if you're giving the feedback, be thankful for the people making changes, right? Be thankful for them, build that relationship. I think it goes a long way in making sure you're getting the best possible feedback. And number 8, with my typo on the screen, find a tool. Someone's gonna have to give me some visual feedback on this, I'm sure. Take a screenshot. Find a tool made specifically for a process. It can help. If you have the opportunity to get one, like I just talked about, like with video review, it's super, super helpful. I know I appreciate using a tool like that so much. It makes my life and everyone I work with's life easier as well. So I don't see any other comments coming in, so we'll see what happens. If you guys got comments, feel free to leave them below after this is posted. We're going to be checking that. We're going to be answering them. If you've got your best practices or suggestions on how you go about getting feedback, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in your organization, whatever it might be that you're doing, let us know. We'd love to incorporate those and understand what other people are doing, because, we get better. We want to get better too. Don't forget, next Thursday we'll be on again on YouTube. We'll be talking, let me see if I can I can tell you guys the subject here, I bet, because we've got a whole schedule laid out for y'all that we're going to keep doing this. But next week, how to make your first video. So if you're brand new to the whole video creation process, we're going to go very basic, and we're going to talk about how you can do this very easily and be successful. And let me just tell you, it's worth the time. It is an advantage if you can learn how to make some very simple videos, because there's so many things you can do to save time for you and for everybody else. So we'll be back next week, same time on the TechSmith channel. Of course, if you like what you're getting from this, let us know that too. It helps us to make sure we keep doing it. Or if there's a topic that you're like, man, I really wish Matt would talk about this, or someone that you would love me to talk to, let me know and we'll see what we can do. But you gotta let us know in the comments. So thanks everybody for tuning in, for watching this afterwards. Give us a like, subscribe, do whatever you're gonna do to help promote this if you could. We'd love it. And we will see you all next time. Thank you all so very much. And I'm gonna just keep talking so I can pull up the last thing here. Anyways, stay safe, keep improving, keep doing better.